Welcome to Unleash the Athlete. My name is James Leith, and today my guest is Renee Lopez. She is an expert on helping athletes and parents go through the scholarship process. And she's got a book called Looking for a Full Ride that I've read and referenced many times in different podcasts. And she does a great job just dropping a bunch of knowledge bombs on us. And so let's just dive right into it. Please welcome my friend, Renee Lopez.
Well, I was a college coach for 14 years. I was a D1 head coach, D2 head coach, and NAI head coach, as well as an NCAA compliance director. So all of that, in addition to about 2.5 years worth of research of interviewing 65 college coaches, we put together a true recruiting guide perspective. And in order to recruit, teach kids what the recruiting process looks like from a coach's perspective, for parents to understand what that looks like for them, as well as who else in their support system, whether it's their high school coach, their travel club coaches, or maybe it's their athletic directors, school counselors. You know, the reality is we want to be able to help everyone understand what the real story is like. And so I title myself a recruiting educator, and then I also do some leadership development speaking as well and training programs.
Well, we have a mutual mentor in John Gordon.
Absolutely.
And we're both fans of John. You said John Maxwell as well?
Yes, right? Absolutely.
I mean, it's like talking to a mirror. Like we have a lot of the same stuff. But what's different, I think, is my recruiting process when I was a senior in high school was 20-something years ago. And I just remember sitting in the guidance counselor's office, and she's like, "Oh, you want to get a scholarship?" And I said, "Yeah." And she brought over a book of colleges and said, "Good luck." I'm like, what am I supposed to do here? You know, and at my school, there was no education on getting qualified for NC2A, NAIA, any of that stuff. It was just like, oh, I hope you get noticed, and that recruiter will do all the work. And so what would you have told me to do?
Wow, it is completely different for sure. Because, I can tell you,
that was terrible.
20 years ago, I sent my VHS tapes out to, college coaches, and we wrote actual letters to coaches because email was not really a thing.
Kids got it so easy these days.
Yeah, exactly. So now, it's a lot different. With kids can upload, video on whether it's on Huddle or they're uploading it onto, just YouTube, and be able to send those links out to college coaches via email, and being able to just be able to interact with coaches, very soon, earlier in the process, definitely than probably you and I did. I was doing most of my senior year too. And so, I think it's really a great thing now that social media has helped in that process, has made it also a little more challenging to make sure that student athletes are doing the right things and they're not putting bad things on social media that will hurt them. But I think, it's interesting in looking at the process is saying that so many people just don't really realize it's a process. It's not just a one-time thing. You really need to explore the programs and see what's a good fit for you overall, not just, from a sports perspective, but looking at it academically, socially. Do you want to be at a big school, a small school? Is it in a large city? Is it in a suburb? But thinking through that as well in terms of your career. How do you get internships and that whole thing called graduation? And then there's another portion of that is realizing not everyone's on a full ride athletic scholarship. So how do you find the right schools you're going to be able to afford financially, especially this day and age right now with everything going on too? So, it's definitely a completely different process than what we've had, what you and I for sure went through.
Yeah.
But you need to talk with coaches. You need to start early, and, how do we help them along, whether it's high school coaches or travel coaches or athletic directors, and then school counselors as well as the parents. But not doing the process for them. That's the key as well.
Well, I think a big misconception that you just hit on is that not everybody's on a full ride scholarship. And that's what parents are always talking about. It's like, I want to get all of college paid for. And it's like, well, if you have a group of soccer players and there's 12 people on the roster and 2 of them graduate, that means that there's only 2 left. But then again, maybe that school doesn't have all the money for 12 full ride scholarships. And not every school guarantees it every year, right?
Correct. I think it's important for people to know and understand that there's 2 different types of scholarships in terms of how they're classified. Is that they can either be a head count sport or an equivalency sport. They're 2 different things. And a head count sport, like we typically hear about basketballs and footballs, and realizing that more kids are going to be on full scholarships at that type of situation, but not every program is funded the same way. And a lot of what we hear on TV in the media is what happens in the Power Five conferences. And, you know, you hear all these things, the SEC, the ACC, what's going on.
Oh, it's flashy and there's a bunch of gear and there's all this stuff. But it's like, oh, there's hundreds of other colleges out there.
Yes. And so I always tell everyone, we all loved the movie The Blind Side. We thought it was great. It was an awesome story. Great. Now I tell everyone, delete everything of what you witnessed of the recruiting process out of your head, because that's just not realistic. So,
well, and he was a monster. He was huge. Of course he was going to get to the NFL. Like, yeah. Of course.
So I always tell them, you know, you understand what the difference is, especially if you're in an equivalency sport, that a lot of coaches are really looking to stack academic scholarships as well as maybe a portion of athletic money, as well as financial aid, things through FAFSA, grants, stuff like that, maybe a leadership scholarship, stuff like that. And so I think a lot of people have a very big misconception that every student athlete in college is on a full ride. And then you look and say, well, a lot of people don't realize that there's actually sometimes in some sports more opportunities to get a full ride to go to a junior college or an NAI school or a D2. And a lot of people dismiss, and they just kind of a mentality of like, oh, I've got D1 on the brain. And that's what college coaches joke it is, the idea that, you know, we have D1 on the brain. That's all we're going to do. We're only look at D1s. And I always tell people, you need to start out with like 20 to 30 colleges in the process. And, you know, I always refer to it as, you know, it's really funny. I actually keep this right next to me because I do a lot of consulting and I help families. I actually have a box of noodles for those who can't see this.
A box of noodles. Okay.
Yes. So I want to throw this out there. This is actually a thought when you go through the recruiting process. Is, you know, I don't know if you've ever done this or not, but think about this situation. When you boil noodles and they become wet, I don't know if you've ever done this before, but I highly encourage you guys to do that.
I have boiled noodles. I'm with you so far. We're good.
So if you do this would be a great quarantine fun. Find a wall that you don't really care about, and it's okay. But the idea is grab a bunch of wet noodles and throw them at a wall. And some of them will stick and some of them won't. And so I always tell people,
I do that pretty often.
There you go. See,
I just start throwing food against the wall.
So the idea is you think about that is some wet noodles are going to stick. Some coaches are going to be interested in you. Some coaches aren't. And how do we teach kids to really look at that? And I always tell them is I want you to think about it as like throwing wet noodles at the wall. Some noodles are going to stick. Some are going to be interested in your talent. Some are going to need your position. Some aren't. And sometimes it's not going to be a good fit for you academically, socially, financially, or even maybe just the climate. You know, it's totally different.
I like what you said about the fit, because I'll get kids asking me, where should I go to college? And the number one question I ask them is, where do you want to tell people you went to school for the rest of your life?
Wow,
because
that's great.
Back here, I've got a Fresno State helmet. I'm a Bulldog, thick and thin, like all the way till the end. I am a Fresno State Bulldog. In fact, I was the mascot, so I literally was the Bulldog. And I wanted that to be my alma mater.
I love it.
That's where I wanted to go. I didn't want to go anywhere else. And I went there, and now I'm a Bulldog alumni. And so it's that matters, you know, visiting the campus, making sure that it fits with your values, it fits with who you are and who you see yourself as, your identity, because it becomes who you are for the rest of your life. Where'd you go to school? Where'd you go to school? People ask that all the time.
Absolutely, 100%. You know, I always tell them to take the broken leg test and to think
about the broken leg test.
Yeah. Okay. So if you think about it and go like, okay, what if you tear your ACL, you break your leg, or you have, you know, maybe you have an awful situation in terms of an injury and you can no longer play. Is that school a place you will still want to be, academically as well as socially, you know, and thinking about the bigger picture, like you said, you wanted to always be a Bulldog and have that mentality. It's the reality is we need to think about the bigger picture of why we're choosing a college, and college coaches want to hear that you're choosing a college beyond just the sport. They actually want you to know, to be able to say, hey, I'm looking at this university because you have these academic programs, because of the size of the school, maybe the location, maybe, the social environment, maybe it's a Christian college, or maybe it's a large school, small school. Again, the idea is finding the overall fit. And I think, like I said, the hard part is when you start the process, everyone thinks they'll look at 3 or 4 schools and go, this is what I'm going to do. And then it doesn't work out for them. They still want to play. Right. And so that's why I tell everyone, let's go 20 to 30 schools, get those wet noodles mentality, throw them at the wall, see who's interested in you. You know, they may not be graduating athletes of the same year you are, that those positions that you needed, or they may not have scholarship money opening up during those times, or maybe they have 4 people in your same position and they're not looking for a 5th. And that's not an ability issue for you in terms of, are you talented enough? Instead, it's an issue of really the idea of if it's a good fit for the university
Right.
and what their needs are for their athletic programs. So,
Right.
it's so key right now to make sure you find that overall fit in the broken leg test.
Well, let's talk about right now with being in the pandemic, COVID-19, people aren't in school. We talked about graduation and graduations aren't happening. I was out walking yesterday and I saw people taking prom pictures to a prom they're not going to go to. But for parents that are watching this, what should they be encouraging their athletes to do in order to get them closer to a scholarship as they get closer to graduation?
Well, I think a lot of people need to be proactive right now, because let's think about this. Besides maybe college coaches who are sitting at home homeschooling their own, elementary kids or high school age kids, the reality is they can't be doing very much. They can actually be on Zoom calls and they can be responding to emails if you're at that recruitable age to be able to do. But the idea is making sure that you're being proactive and getting on their radar, because they can sit around and watch video right now. That's what they can do. Now, some people don't have video, and that's hard because a lot of things were canceled. They were planning on filming this spring. But, just interacting with them, letting them know you're interested in the school and sending emails out and being proactive. Don't sit back. You want those coaches to know you're interested, and even at your younger ages where they can't be in full-blown recruiting mode and talking with you, you're still getting into their databases and getting them to know who you are. And I think those kids who are doing that right now during the pandemic is going to help them, as well as knowing and understanding, what the changes are with the 2020 recruiting classes in terms of eligibility, as well as some of the changes that are going to happen with the whole pass-fail thing going on in a lot of high schools. So I think if you can be proactive in knowing what that looks like, as well as gathering up a lot of your information, to be sending out to them. But very, very important too is making sure you check yourself on social media, and that you're not just putting negative Nelly.
Let's pause right there. So when you say check yourself on social media, that is so important, because coaches are looking at social media and they're catfishing and they have fake profiles. Talk about the organizations that get hired just to look at social media.
Oh my gosh, it's huge. You would not believe it. How many?
I believe it, because I've worked with them. But these kids, they have no idea. They're like, oh, I can just talk trash. No one will know who I am. It's like, they're gonna find you.
So I always tell student athletes that I work with in the recruiting process is let them understand that, okay, let's say you're really talented. Well, there's some other kid who's really, really talented, just the same as you are across the country. We know where they are. It may be in a different state, it may be down the street. Let's say now we look and we say, oh, they have pretty much the same GPAs. Okay. The separator in terms of which kid are you going to really go after is the kid that we look and we say it's going to be a good fit for our culture and our team. So if you are negative Nelly, on your social media, especially the past few months, like we all could be negative Nelly. There's 1,000 reasons why we all can be negative Nellies on social media. But the idea is they're looking for people who are going to be positive and trying, like I said, turn lemons into lemonade if you can, and find out ways to be able to reach people and help people and encourage people, in whether that's your teammates or your future coaches. And this is really important too, is coaches and parents realizing that a lot of the times these kids on social media may get tagged from somebody else in a picture that can hurt them, or it could even be parents being not so positive as well on social media, and maybe they're throwing their coach under the bus, or they're saying things that are just negative. Well, college coaches don't want that type of family environment coming into their program. They want people who are going to be positive, who are going to work hard and encouraging. And yeah, we all have our down days, but on a down day, you don't publicize everything that's going wrong. Instead, you try and turn towards other things to be able to hopefully encourage you and inspire you. So I think social media, if people think about it from the recruiting standpoint of, oh, I got to put my film of me playing on social media, and it's like, yes, that helps in some regards, but social media is really about them trying to figure out who your character is, what your attitude is, and just kind of how you respond to adversity. And I think that's a really key thing, and so many people make so many mistakes. So a couple things we talk about in my book is the idea of what things should you be putting on social media. And how do you help it? I always tell everyone, if you have no idea what to put on social media, follow our friends, John Gordon and John Maxwell.
Yes.
And they will give you something every single day you can share that will be inspiring and encouraging to people, for sure.
Yeah, I think parents don't realize that they could be detrimental to the future of their child. And that coaches, by the time they're at the level of recruiting for a university, they've been around for a long time and they can recognize talent. And when your athlete is a sophomore or junior in high school, they know, like, this person has the athletic potential to be here. Now, that's everywhere. Athletic talent is everywhere. It's in abundance. There's no lack of athletic talent to fill every roster at every college in America. However, not everybody has the character or can fit into a culture. And when I was at a IMG Academy in Florida, and a lot of big time recruiters came through there, even head coaches, big time head coaches. And they were there knowing that everybody there could possibly fit on the team athletically. But they're looking for these little tiny things like body language, social media. Does the person look me in the eye when they talk to me? Are they sitting there? I don't even know where my phone is. Oh, here it is. Are they sitting here like, oh yeah, coach, that's good. That's good. You know, are they doing that, or are they really locked in? And even at the point of NFL draft and NBA combine, or that these athletes have gotten pushed through college and they don't really know how to communicate and how to, you know, connect with somebody, that you can teach your kid to do that kind of stuff and to clean up their social media and to be polite whenever they meet anybody, because you never know who it is that's there to watch you. And they already know you're talented. They're looking at what happens when the whistle blows to end the play until the next play starts, or however the sport goes. So what do you tell an athlete to be posting on social media?
Well, you know, obviously is you can be posting fun things with you and your family, what you're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
You can be posting, you know, hey, all of us can be doing a core workout. It doesn't matter where you're at. You can do a core workout. I mean, that's reality. You can do ACL prevention. Too close to home.
That COVID-19, man. That's
exactly. You could be, you know, talking about some things that you're reading about, and maybe you're reading, you know, about how to become a better leader or how to be more confident. You can post some of those things that are going on. You can talk about the fact that you are, you know, hey, you're hitting the grind and you're studying for your chemistry class. You know, the fact is show what your priorities are in terms of who you are and what you want to demonstrate to the world, as opposed to being negative, complaining. And, you know, interesting, you know, in our research, we interviewed 65 college coaches and athletic directors. We have some of the biggest names you'll ever meet, you know, the athletic director at Florida, the athletic director at Alabama. You know, we also have a rifle coach from NC State, a gymnastics coach from Nebraska, a head women's soccer coach from Virginia, who used to be the U.S. women's national team assistant, but junior colleges as well, and across 19 sports. And we all across the board, we went from every division, every level on purpose, intentionally. And it's really interesting. One of the things that they all consistently said, I was going to interview 100 people, honestly, but I got to the point where they all were saying the same things that I stopped.
Yeah,
so I see
that too.
And so the funny part is I said, okay, so beyond athletic talent, beyond, you know, looking at their grades, obviously we want good talented academically. Number 3 thing that they were looking for across the board, it didn't matter what sport it was, water polo, wrestling, basketball, volleyball, soccer, whatever it was, didn't matter. The number 3 thing that they all said they look for was, how do they manage with adversity? How do they respond when there's setbacks? We want to watch what they're doing. Well, now we look at this in the COVID-19 situation and go, every one of us has setbacks, and how are they responding? So anything you can do to show that you're doing positive, you're trying to grow yourself, you know, get 1% better every day. You know, I know that mentality is, you know, thinking through that we can get better every single day. It may look a little different in terms of where our field is, or not being in a pool, whatever your sport is.
Right.
But the fact is, we can be getting better 1% every day. And that can look a little bit different. Maybe it's learning about your diet and improving your diet. I know a lot of us need to be doing that right now. Like I said, maybe it's doing core work. Maybe it's going for a run. Maybe it's pouring into a teammate. Maybe you're just doing a Zoom session, or maybe you're asking coach, hey, how can I be a better leader on this team? And you can create situations where you can put some of those things out there in social media, because a coach looks and says, that's the type of kid I want, versus, again, all things being the same, the kid that's complaining about how awful life is and I'm stuck indoors and blah, 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 all these things, I can't be out playing. Or
don't want that for 4 years.
Exactly. Or
like, just don't.
Yeah. Or I just read this book, and hey, I just learned this, or here's a picture of something I just learned about, or hey, I'm learning how to, learning how to do things, maybe even life skills. I've seen a couple of kids put on they're learning how to do laundry. I'm like, yep, that's great, because you need that skill before you go to college.
That's huge. I was working with some e-sport athletes. The Cowboys bought a team called Complexity, and they brought me in to be the director of performance. And like you're going to teach them mental resiliency and leadership development, communication. And all I did mostly was teach them conflict resolution and laundry and how to cook and just these basic things. But I have a lot of friends who work in Major League Baseball, and they have a lot of development teams. There's a lot of development players out there, and they'll come to the States and they'll come from a very different upbringing, and like just leave milk out on the counter, and clothes are just like, why do they need to be washed? I just throw them in the water for a minute and then put them back on. Like it's crazy, but having those kind of skills. But you mentioned something earlier that reminded me of what to talk about with a coach. And the coach knows your highlights. They know how good you are. They've talked to your coaches. And one of the pieces of advice that I give an athlete who's looking to move to the next level is talk about when you failed and then how you overcame that. And I get the same response every time. They're like, no way. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about how I threw 3 touchdowns or 3 interceptions. I'm like, yeah, but you came back and won the game. So talk about that, because it's great storytelling. Nobody likes to watch a movie where everything is great in the middle or in the beginning of the movie, and at the end, everything works out. That's a terrible movie. No, things are okay in the beginning. Something terrible happens, and then Vince Vaughn figures it out and makes everybody laugh because he does something crazy and brings back Christmas,
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so like, what else can they kind of be talking to the coaches about to sell themselves? Because that's really what they're doing, is not because with their performance, they've already sold themselves, but how do you sell yourself as a player, as a human?
Well, I think obviously you need to do the X's and O's in terms of, sending film and being able to send player profiles and your transcripts and things like that.
And
but
I just want to say that all that stuff is in this book. Like,
absolutely.
This is a good book.
Well, thank you.
Renee,
appreciate that.
Yeah, you did a great job. It's called Looking for a Full Ride. And we have a coupon code actually, right?
Yeah, absolutely. For some free shipping if you guys are interested. And one of the things that we also include in there is 13 questions to ask a college coach. And so what it's going to do is help you to look mature to the coach, that you're taking this process seriously and it's not just about your sport, but asking questions like, what academic support programs do you guys have on your campus? Everyone assumes that it's exact same on every college campus, and it's not. It's definitely not. But also be able to ask, hey, coach, can you tell me what a typical schedule is for our week? And if that's the case, then, okay, well, what if I'm a science major and I'm going to take, I need to take labs? What does that look like at this school? And be able to have some of those conversations that isn't about your sport, but it's about the idea of time management. It's showing them your maturity in terms of why you're really choosing a school. It's about the academics. And being able to really have those kind of conversations, I think that's what really sets you apart. And it's funny, I've actually had some college coaching friends say to me, hey, I have a copy of your book, and I just had a recruit who definitely had read your book because they're asking some of the questions. And so
but that just shows that they learn. It shows that they're using their resources. You didn't. One of the questions that I think is important is, do you have a mental performance coach? And have you heard of James Lee? Like, if we can put that in version 2, that would be awesome.
We talk about, do you have any leadership development and also team building things? I didn't put James Lee there. Maybe I need to add that into that. So.
You know what? This volume 2. Let's
we'll work on that.
I had a question written down just because I wanted to know what people ask you. What is the most major misconception that people have about getting a scholarship?
Well, I think a lot of people think that we should just hire a recruiting service to blast out emails to college coaches, and that those are going to be the best way to get seen. And the reality is, college coaches, all of these coaches I talk with said to me, make sure they're sending personalized emails to us. We don't want to hear from recruiting service. We actually want to hear from you. We want you to tell us everything of your broken leg test, why you're interested in the school. Don't just talk about the sport, but talk about the things that interest you about the college and something about our program that interests you. And, I always tell everyone, look on their website. Did you see a community service project they were just involved in, whether it's Habitat for Humanity or something like that? And comment about that in your email to them. Coaches love that because what you've shown them is you've done your research. You're not just blasting out every single email to the exact same email and then messing up coaches' names, which happens all the time.
Don't misspell a coach's name. Don't put your when you meant you are. Get the apostrophe in there. There are 3 types of to.
Yes.
Just like very basic things. Like if you can't write a good letter, you can't study a playbook. Like
absolutely
that, and maybe you can, maybe you're better at playbooks, but that's not what you're going to communicate to the
Absolutely.
coach.
And you think about it from a common misconceptions, like you mentioned, is everyone thinks that if, well, I'll just get seen as well. I'm talented in my area, so I'll just get seen. And I say, don't sit back. Market yourself. Why
Right.
put your future in somebody else's hands? Don't expect your high school coaches or ADs or your travel coaches that they're the ones that are going to be actually doing all the recruiting process for you. No, there is no reason you can't send emails to college coaches. They'll have some restrictions based off of the graduation year as well as your sport and the level you're contacting of what they can do back with you. But you can always initiate it. Let them know of your interest. Write a professional email. And college coaches want to hear from you. They want to, and they want to interact with you. And this is a really key part. Notice who I said is sending the email, from the student athlete, not the parents.
And it would be great for the student athlete to have a really confusing or, inappropriate email address, right? Like with numbers that mean certain things, or, it's so silly. Like, do you remember what your first AOL Instant Messenger name was?
Man, I can't even remember back that far for sure. But, the funny
Mine
one
was
I actually
inappropriate.
included in my book.
Very inappropriate.
Well, the one inappropriate one that somebody sent me when I was coaching college was bring sexy back at whatever, Gmail or Yahoo.com.
Yeah, you're
and
probably not going to make it.
Probably a deleted email. So you got to remember that college coaches get hundreds of emails a month from kids that are interested in their school.
Right.
They're looking for mature individuals who are hardworking, have the right positive attitudes, the right grades, and the right fit athletically. But more importantly, how do they bounce back from adversity? And so, you look at that bigger picture is, are you marketing yourself, or did you spend thousands of dollars to have a recruiting service do it for you, which is completely unnecessary? You can send the emails yourself. And I tell everyone, before you go and purchase a recruiting service, pick up a copy of my book, read my book, and guess what? After you've read it, every single one of them comes back to me and says, thank God you saved me thousands of dollars. It's not necessary. And that's my goal and my objective, to help families and coaches, especially high school coaches and club coaches, travel coaches, whoever you are, athletic directors, to help student athletes understand what to be doing and what not to be doing in the process, as well as parents too.
Yeah, when I work with people at a very shallow surface level compared to what you do, you go very deep, and your book is very insightful. The basic things that I teach and add to this, or tell me if I'm wrong, but I tell them, take your social media accounts and make them all the same username. And preferably your name. And don't, all my Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, it's all James Leith. And that it's not a matter of, I don't want people to find me. It's like, you're found. The days of being private are over. If you've ever
100%.
posted anything. And there's also a permanent record. Because when you and I were going to school, the teachers would lie to us and tell us, that's a black mark on your permanent record. And we find out now there's no record. There's nobody has any idea what I did when I was in 8th grade. They don't remember anything because it's not out there. There's no photo to prove it. But now everything is archived somewhere. And so I teach them, make your full name and maybe put your number at the end, but that it should match your email address. Get a Gmail address that is a professional address that you only give to the recruiting service, or not to the service, but to the schools, so that you can go into that little email account and be like, these are the people that have reached out to me. Absolutely. Would you add anything, or am I wrong in any of that?
No, 100%. And I think a lot of people say, well, I'll just not put my social media out there and I'll just mark it as private. Well, guess what? The default thinking process from coaches is you have something to hide. Yep. Now, some of you may say, well, but coach, I don't really want it out there because of safety and things like that. I always say to them, then fine, just send those in your email to a college coach. Say, here's my profile link, so you can find out who I am, and offer it up, because that means you don't have anything to hide. And, even if you have it on private, then, try and follow them and such like that. But I think you're right. Having that professional email address, like I said, bringing sexy back is not the appropriate email address to send to a college coach. Making sure you send professional emails. And then using your social media as something positive to help you, not to shoot yourself in the foot. And I think a lot of kids do that. And you watch, it's so funny. I'm friends with so many college coaches on Facebook and Twitter and things like that, Instagram, stuff like that. And I feel like almost weekly I have one of my coaching friends post, well, just dropped another recruit because of what they did on social media. Yep. And it's crazy what the things kids do that hurt themselves. So we want to make sure you're professional in your responses. I always tell them to take the pastor/grandma/ your principal / athletic director test on your social media. If they can sit down with you next to you and look through every part of your social media and think it's a good thing, then you've done the right things. If one of those people I just mentioned, your grandma, your pastor, your principal, your athletic director, cannot sit down with you, you probably need to delete it, and you need to clean up what you're doing for sure.
Yeah.
And that's something you can be doing right now.
No, a big misconception with social media is that people will put something and they're like, oh, I thought it was funny. And so they'll be like, it was just, my intention was a joke, and intention doesn't matter.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter, because that perception is what's gonna mark them. I had this one student that he was offered a football scholarship at a Northern California school, and he had all but signed. And I follow all my athletes on Twitter, and he didn't go to school, or he was at the school late. I guess he overslept or something, but on Twitter he goes, I don't want to go to school today, and then put a sad face and then a gun emoji right next to it.
Wow.
And I was like, this dude, gosh. And so I had his phone number, so I kept calling and calling and calling. It was like 11 o'clock in the morning, and I went to that high school. And so I called the principal, and I was like, hey, I need to talk to so-and-so immediately. It's an emergency. And he was like, okay. So he put me through, and he was in history class. And so the teacher answers the phone. What was funny is it was my old history teacher. So I was like, oh, Mr. So-and-so, hey, I need to talk to so-and-so right now. And so I put him on the phone, and I was like, dude, you need to take that off of Twitter immediately. Like right now. I'm not going to tell you why. Just do it now. And he took it down. So 2 weeks later, he goes to that university on a recruiting trip, and he calls me after a meeting. He's like, Coach, I just got out of the meeting with the football coaches. And I go, what happened? He goes, when I walked in the room, they had a snapshot of that tweet.
Yep.
You'd taken it down, and they snapshotted it. And the first thing they said when they sit down, they didn't say hi to him. They just said, explain this right now.
Absolutely.
And this kid was like, oh, I was tired, and it was a foggy day schedule, and like, I just didn't want to go to school and stuff. And they go, and if you hadn't have taken it down as fast as you did, we would have taken away your scholarship. And the moral of that story is that happens without the kid knowing, and they just get their scholarship pulled, or the coaches lose interest and the kids have no idea that it was a repercussion it was a consequence of them being just funny in their mind.
Absolutely.
Funny, and there's nothing funny about putting a gun emoji in a tweet.
Right.
No, and this was and it was like a few weeks after some massacre, and so it was like the timing couldn't have been worse on this kid.
Right.
And but he took it down, and luckily they said, hey, because you took it down, we're gonna keep going with this.
Well, and you think about that, so often these situations happen. You don't even realize you're on a coach's list of interest, and you get crossed off the list because of your social media.
You have no idea.
You have no idea. And I always tell people, if you knew the number of kids that get crossed off my list because of it, it would blow your mind. And you're like, well, really? And I'm like, yeah, no, we're not joking when we talk about this. And, we talk about that as well. Even if you aren't going to go play sports, now a lot of admissions officers are looking as well, and they're trained to do that too. And people say, well, but they're not my friends, or I have it on private. And the fact is, they have very extensive systems to counteract all of those. Right. And you would be surprised how they find out those things out, even if you're not friends with them, even if you're not, they're not following you, whatever it is, depending on whatever social media you're on. But the fact is, you have to be proactive in saying, take that test of making sure that your pastor or your athletic director or principal can sit down with you, because otherwise you're going to hurt yourself and you're going to hurt your future. And think about that. One little tweet could completely change your life and lose thousands of dollars of scholarships and opportunities that could be your future. And so I always tell kids, you got to make sure you're taking care of yourself. And, that also transfers to over things and in terms of how you're interacting, whether on the field or the court or whatever it may be for you, there's other parts of that, how you behave at an event. And, let's say it's a showcase or a tournament, and you don't see the coaches there of what the school you think that you're there. Well, I always tell kids this story. It's important to know. I have a really close friend who's coached college for probably as long as I have. And, well, he had family in one part of the country, and I had family in another part of the country. And so we would go, there was always these two tournaments that are going on the exact same weekends. One was on the East Coast, one was on the West Coast. So we coached in different schools, but we were really good friends, and we kind of saw the game the same way. And guess what? If he had kids that were going to be at this tournament that I was going to go to, he would send me those lists of kids, and he'd want me to go watch and report back to them, and vice versa. So he'd watch some kids for me on the other side of the country the same weekend. But our schools weren't, quote unquote, represented there, but you didn't know that somebody else was actually watching and going to report back. And so this happened, actually, a situation where a kid that he wanted me to watch, I watched for him. And I literally came back, called him up, and I said, you won't believe how this kid acted. And they were just, we'll just call the term playing a fool and just being ridiculous to the officials at the game and just being absolutely ridiculous. And so were the parents. So you saw the parents misbehaving, you saw the kid misbehaving, and guess what? Well, that kid said, well, I never saw that coach there. They couldn't have been there. But they weren't. You're right, they weren't. But college coaches know everyone. We know tons and tons of people.
One of my favorite, but let me just share this. One of my favorite tricks that recruiters do is they dress up as a fan from the opposing team.
Yep.
And so when that athlete comes through and they start talking trash to the other team's fans, they have no idea that the recruiter that is there to see them is sitting there being yelled at, where that kid is, even if that kid is not really a jerk, but that's part of the persona that he or she puts out there. It's like, you've just ruined yourself by putting on this performance, thinking that you're a professional athlete and you can get away with anything, which, by the way, we see players no longer can get away with bad attitudes. They can be replaced. There's so much talent out there.
Absolutely.
But I love that, that the recruiters are dressing up as opposing team fans. Like, you have no idea. This guy's got a hat on, glasses, and he's wearing blue or whatever. And he's just like, I'm here to look at you, but you have no idea because I'm on the other team's stance.
Absolutely. The reality is that as college coaches, their reputation and their careers and their livelihoods is based off of how their student athletes perform in terms of on the field, on the court, whatever it is, but also how you behave. And, if you're acting a fool when you're in high school or, and with your club teams or whatever it is, or travel teams, and you start acting that way, we have the expectation you're going to continue acting that way. And so, and the same thing with parents. They're looking and observing the parents and how they act in the situations. Are they screaming and yelling at the coach? Are they mad because their kid didn't get as much playing time as they wanted? Well, we don't want those situations as well on, our teams either as college coaches. So I always tell everyone, realize that someone's always watching.
Always.
One of the things, a lot of coaches have told me is that we ask when they go to their high schools and talk with their coaches or something, they also stop by the cafeteria and say, tell me about this kid, and ask the cafeteria workers, tell me about this kid. How do they act? What do they do? Are they saying please and thank you, or are they being a jerk to you? And we want to know who they are in the good, the bad, and the ugly. And no, we're not going to always have perfect days, but the fact is, who's your character is a huge part of the recruiting process. And so, I tell kids, you need to be proactive in contacting them, but also you need to be proactive in who you are and growing and developing as an individual and showing that you have maturity in what you're doing, because that's what college coaches are looking for. And it's not a time for playing, quote unquote, playing around and just, I'm just going to give the opposing team, a hard time, or the officials a hard time because I felt like it.
Don't do it.
So you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. So I tell them.
One of my favorite things that coaches have me do is that I'll come in and pretend to be a recruiter, but the kids won't know that I'm a recruiter. And so I'll be watching their personality, they're taking care of each other or, talking to each other. And then he'll say, all right, hey guys, come on over. I want to introduce so-and-so. He'll make up a name in case any of them has ever heard of me, and be like, he's from insert big university. And you see a complete change in these kids. And because I'm not the recruiter, I get to call them out. And I'm like, hey, how you doing? Come here. What's your name? Matt? Cool, Matt. I saw that you just left the weight room with all your stuff laying out. But then you found out that I was a recruiter from so-and-so, and now all of a sudden you're polite. What do you think that communicates to me? Why not just be that person all the time? And it's a great lesson because they can now fix who they are, and they're like, oh, okay, I need to be more aware of what I do. And that I teach this thing called 4 L's of leadership. And the last one is live like you're live all the time. Like you're always live. Like right now we are live on Facebook, and there are people watching right now. There's a bunch of people watching, but there's always people watching, and you have no idea who it is or who they know or why they're there. So just be nice, be kind, be the person that you want people to think of you as.
Absolutely. I think that's such a huge lesson in life overall, but, especially in the college recruiting process. So, and I think that's the key is, being able to show the coaches, obviously they want to know the X's and O's. They want to make sure you're talented enough, but there's a lot of kids who are talented. So the defining situation is who you are in terms of your character and what you demonstrate to that. That means how you treat your parents as well. You know, it's funny when I interviewed all these college coaches, again, all different sports. It's so funny. I got this comment 7 times, and to me, it just made me really laugh because all different sports coaches, all different levels. We're talking, SEC, ACC type of level, and then we're talking some junior college coaches and everything in between. 7 coaches said this to me without me prompting. Okay, the only question I asked them is, what are your biggest pet peeves in the college recruiting process when it comes to student athletes? 7 of 65 said this without me even mentioning it. They said, I can't believe that after a game or a match, whatever it is, or a meet, like a student athlete walks over to their parents, throw their bag at their parents, making them carry their bag, and then complaining about the color of Gatorade that their parent is offering them. 7 coaches said that to me. Never even mentioned Gatorade to them. They all just said that out there. And so it's like, well, let's think about this. There's a reason 7 college coaches are saying this, because they're seeing it happen across the board. And so, making sure that your student athletes are doing the right things and how they speak to their coaches. What are their nonverbals during halftime? Are they off in the corner?
Or nonverbals after you make a mistake.
Absolutely.
Like that's
100%.
what they're looking for. Yeah.
Absolutely. They're looking to see who you are. Like I said, how do you bounce back after adversity? And are you coachable? And so that's the key part.
I was just glad my parents showed up. Not to mention they didn't bring me Gatorade. They were like, there's a hose over there, dude. Go ahead and just, tap water will be fine for you.
We'll run you through McDonald's afterwards.
That happened more often than not. Yeah, absolutely. Burgers were like 39 cents or something. Like, oh, it's fantastic. Well, this has been a great conversation. How can people find you?
Well, I think definitely the best things to do is pick up a copy of my book, lookingforafullride.com, and we're going to have a coupon code for you guys. We'll put it, I guess you can put it in the show notes there.
I will.
And it's going to allow you to have free shipping to get a copy of my book. And basically, it's going to give you lots of information about the process from A to Z. If you are a coach who works with student athletes or a principal, athletic director, or just a parent of a high school student athlete, definitely get this book, and I highly encourage you to start reading it early in the process for sure. If you want to reach me as well, you can follow me on Facebook at Looking for a Full Ride, as well as you can find me. We actually have on our website, rlopezcoaching.com, we have over 40 free blogs on the college recruiting process. And at the very bottom of our blogs, you can actually link into our Facebook groups that we run. I have multiple of them. I think there's 9 right now. One of them is I think we have almost 9,000 people in it. And it's educating parents of the college recruiting process. So if you're a parent or a coach, you definitely want to join that. We don't let student athletes in that. It's actually just for parents and coaches. And we want to just be able to help you guys through that process. So you can find that at rlopezcoaching.com, as well as you can follow me on Facebook with Looking for a Full Ride. We'll post lots of information, especially the updates with the NCAA and things like that are changing at NAI, changing on a day-to-day basis these days, as well as, you can follow all that information if you want to. You can find me also on Instagram at Renee Lopez 5, as well as you can find me on Twitter. I'm not as active on Twitter just because there's too much going on.
There is, yeah. So, well, you also do a lot of webinars, and recently you've been doing a lot of webinars. So, that's be a good resource too, because you do a Q&A at the end, right?
Absolutely. We did quite a few the past few weeks, and we have been having lots of experts come on and help as well in the process. And so we'll continue that as long as we're all kind of stuck indoors and quarantined, and we'll see where that goes in the next few months. But I think there's a lot of information that we try and put out there to help you guys in the process. My number one objective is to educate families on the college recruiting process, as well as I do a lot of webinars for different organizations, and I'll put it out there for your listeners too. If you are someone who is in charge, you're maybe on a board of a youth sports program, or maybe an athletic director, or maybe a coach at a high school, if you guys are interested in, I will do free webinars for you guys if you guys purchase 25 books for your organization. So I'm completely waiving my speaking fees at this point. I just want to be able to help families and help them in the process. So if you guys are interested, feel free to reach out to me at info@lookingforafullride.com, info@lookingforafullride.com, and we'll be glad to help you guys in that process. Like I said, it's a special we're only running right now. We are not normally running that special. So we want to just be able to help families and clubs and organizations, travel teams, And we'll just try and help you guys. And, you guys can have a couple hundred people on our line if we need to. So
Awesome.
we're glad to help you
guys. Well, thank you, Renee. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. And I love to be able to support people who, follow the things I do as well in leadership development and helping the future athletes of the world.
Fantastic. Well, stay safe, and I'm sure we will talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me on.
Bye, Renee.
Bye-bye.
So that was a lot of information, and she speaks really fast because she knows what she's talking about. And I catch her on webinars a couple times a week, and she's always putting out a lot of great content. So I'll put some information in the show notes if you want to reach out to her. Again, her book is Looking for a Full Ride: How to Quadruple Your Chances at an Athletic Scholarship. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. She's a wonderful person. Please reach out to her. And if you haven't yet, please text the word podcast to 972-236-5924 and join the UTA text message community. Remember, there's an athlete in all of us. Unleash the athlete today.